We should not be happy about Jews refusing to assimilate to a Christian social order. We should want Jews to assimilate to a Christian social order because that's what loving Jews entails. We love Jews and we want them to go to heaven and we want to evangelize them. We're not coming from a place of hate. We're coming from a place of love when we say these things. And any Christian with any fortitude should be willing to tell their Jewish friends these things about Hanukkah. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Red Top Report. I am your host, Joe Enders, and today we are going to be talking about Hanukkah. Yeah, that's right. Is Hanukkah something that Catholics can talk about, or is it a subversive Jewish plot? Now, I'm sure there's going to be people that love this answer, that don't like this answer, that do whatever. Any plethora of answers and responses are probably going to be given to this video. But we're going to give you the honest Catholic truth on this one. And we've done quite a bit of research going into this, Ronan.
Yeah, man, that's right.
So what prompted this video is that we saw that this Polish politician, what was his name, Ronan?
Grzegorz Braun.
Yeah, those Polish names, man, you can never really pronounce them well. But he went into this museum, and he's a Catholic, like a huge Catholic guy. You know, he's they call him far right, just like they call us far right. But one of the things that was really interesting about it is that he was saying that he's trying to stop the Jews from taking over Poland. And here's the clip. This guy's truly a madman, just a wild man. There it goes.
Panie pośle, co pan robi? Panie pośle, co pan robi?
I mean, Ronan, what a profound display. Now, what I find so interesting about this is that he specifically connected it to Catholicism and how, like, they're trying to, Jews are allegedly trying to change Catholic Poland into a more Jewish sympathetic place. So I kind of want to go into what are Catholics actually supposed to think about Hanukkah. I don't know much about this politician. All I know is that they call him some far right guy and that he put out the menorah for that reasoning. But we want to dive into Hanukkah itself. So the first thing I want to do is pull up the actual definition of Hanukkah from an actual Jewish source. Now, what it says here is that specifically regarding the menorah itself, it's called the Hanukkah, is used during the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah and commemorates the miracle of the oil lasting for much longer than it should have. That's specifically referring to the Maccabees, which there's just so much interesting stuff to talk about, but we'll go into it a little bit more in a bit. According to the Hanukkah story, once Jewish revolutionaries had retaken the temple from the Syrians, specifically the Seleucid Empire at the time, which is the remnants of Alexander's empire. It was around the 160s BC. They wanted to rededicate the temple, the second temple, by the way, to God and restore its ritual purity. 8 days worth of oil were needed to complete the ritual purification, but they were only able to find enough oil for the menorah to burn for 1 day. They lit the menorah with the remaining 1 day's worth of oil, and miraculously, the oil lasted for 8 full days. Now, that's why the Jewish menorah actually has 9 candles, because the traditional menorah was something that they actually kept in the temple, and there was actually 7, which is the number for God. As if you look at it from the Jewish perspective, on the Jewish menorah, the number is 9 candles, and they always have 1 in the middle, and then there's 3 on each side. So for the traditional one, and then for the other one, the 8, they have the 8 candles, and then the 1 in the center. So that 1 candle in the center is the completeness of things, and 9 actually symbolizes divine completeness if you look at that in the Bible. However, there is a Catholic delineation from this. So things kind of changed, but when you look at it from a broader perspective, like when you go way back and think about things, at the time that it happened, like over 2,000 years ago, 2,160 years ago, this was a dedication ceremony. Hanukkah actually means dedication. So when we go into this, there's actually a Catholic perspective that I wanted to put up here. And this comes from one of the Harvard Divinity School guys, Professor John Levinson of Jewish Studies. And he says the Roman Catholic tradition actually honors the Jewish martyrs as saints. And he's referring to the Jewish martyrs, by the way, guys, that were martyred in the Maccabean revolt, which was against the Seleucids, as we were talking about before. And the Eastern Orthodox Church also celebrates August 1st as the Feast of the Holy Maccabees. By contrast, in the literature of the rabbis of the first several centuries of the Common Era, the story lost its connection to the Maccabean uprising, instead becoming associated with later persecutions by the Romans. And by the way, guys, let's think about this from a broader perspective here. This is after the foundation of the Catholic Church under Jesus Christ and the apostles, because the Second Temple actually fell in roughly 70 AD. So that's when the Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans. I believe it was under Emperor Tiberius that happened. Now, the rabbis experienced all sorts of persecutions under the Romans by this, and they tried to connect it to that. And the professor goes on to say, if the change seems odd, recall that the compositions that first told of these events, the books of Maccabees, were not part of the scriptural canon of rabbinic Judaism. So this is actually really interesting. And he goes on to say, but they were canonical in the Catholic Church at the time and remain so in the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox communions. So if you guys read the Protestant Bibles, you know that there's actually only 66 books because they don't include the Maccabees. And that's because the Protestant Bible does not include the Old Testament books that were written down in Greek. And that includes the first and second Maccabees, which is the celebration of, which is where Hanukkah actually occurs. So when you look at it that way, you can kind of think of it like this. The Jews, after the foundation of the Catholic Church, meaning after the Old Covenant was fulfilled by Jesus Christ on the cross, they got together at this council in Jamnia. The Sanhedrin got together and decided that they did not believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah, and they also agreed on certain canons there. And the canons that they agreed on specifically were not to include those Greek books, and that's why Protestants don't include those Greek books in their scripture. However, the Catholics at this time had already been including those stories in their it wasn't canonized yet, but they had been containing it in their scriptures, in their holy books for the longest time. And the reason Jews still know about it today is because Catholics preserved it and canonized it and put it in their Bible. So can you put up the quote again? I want to finish up his analysis here because it's actually really good. He says, and so we encounter another oddity of Hanukkah. Jews know the fuller history of the holiday because Christians preserved the books that the Jews themselves lost. In a further twist, Jews in the Middle Ages encountered the story of the martyred mother and her 7 sons anew in Christian literature and once again placed it in the time of the Maccabees. So what I find so profound about this whole story is that Jews had largely forgotten about Hanukkah. Hanukkah was not actually a big deal to them, which is weird because it is a big deal in the New Testament, and we've made it a big deal. In fact, Hanukkah was actually celebrated by Jesus. So let's put up this scripture verse. Not a lot of people know this. This is John 10, verses 22 through 23. He says, at that time, the festival of the dedication, that's Hanukkah, guys, took place in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the portico of Solomon. Jesus celebrated Hanukkah, guys. So before anybody goes out there and says,
oh, we just hate Jews, oh, we just hate Jewish celebrations, or any blah, blah, blah.
Anything you can want to come up with to try and blame us for telling you the truth. This is Hanukkah. It was a good thing. It's the celebration of martyrs. It's the celebration of a miracle, because this is all pre-Catholic Church. Those people died for the one true faith at the time, which was Old Testament Judaism. It was brilliant. And there was 9 different martyrs. I'm sorry. One was an older gentleman who gave up his life. And then there was 7 sons and their mother who also died in that. Kind of interesting that there was 9, especially considering the fact that there's 9 candles on the Jewish Hanukkah menorahs. But what I find the best about this is that Hanukkah is not the same thing that it used to be. And there's this author who is from Diane Ashton, and she's a professor at, I believe, Rowan University, and she does religious studies specifically. She actually talks about Hanukkah in America and how it actually is not the celebration of the same thing, and it's not actually geared towards the same thing. She says right here, Hanukkah began to evolve from an often neglected occasion in the Jewish calendar. Once again, because they didn't know about it, but Catholics are the ones who revealed all of this stuff to them because of their scriptures, the things that they said are canon. Jewish calendar to one deemed particularly relevant for American Jews. Surprisingly, it did not begin with a new emphasis on actually celebrating the holiday, which is the dedication festival. It's the day, it's the feast day, it's the thing that Jesus would have celebrated. But with new interest in the Maccabees themselves, their image became a recurring trope in heated debates of how Jewish life could thrive in a new land. You can find that on pages 39 through 73. What I find interesting about this is because now it's no longer about faith. It's no longer about the story. It's no longer about anything. You know what it's about? It's about the challenges that Jews currently face and what they currently face in society. And she goes on to validate that point in her conclusion near the end of the book. She actually says, as the 21st century opened, American Jews once again found in Hanukkah's story a way to apply the consoling language of faith while facing new threats to their existence, meaning their existence today. And that existence that they're that they're going through today is labeled as some sort of identity connection to dangerous foreigners, assimilating traitors, loyal martyrs, and faithful heroes. Provided a way to talk about dangers to Jewish life that might lurk beneath a benign experience of life in the United States. So here's the problem. What is the story of Hanukkah? It is about the true religion, Old Testament Judaism, people standing up and dying for that religion against a false religion, which was pagan Roman rule at the time. Pagan Seleucid rule, if you want to go to the actual story of the Maccabees. That pagan Seleucid rule was what they rose up against in the name of true religion, in the name of the one true God. Now let's think about that for a second. When Hanukkah is celebrated in America by Jews who are not Catholic, who do not accept Jesus Christ as their Messiah, what are they celebrating? They're celebrating a connection to an identity of people who rebel against a regime that rules over them. And the regime that rules over them, from the Jewish perspective, from the American Jewish perspective, is a Christian rule, because American is foundationally based on Western civilization, which has been founded under Christian moral underpinnings. So in their mind, they're celebrating it as a rebellion against Christianity. So any Jew in America that's celebrating Hanukkah is using it as an identity connection to the Maccabees to show that they, as Jews, are standing against a Christian social order like Jews in the Maccabees, who were following the true religion, rose against the false religion of the pagan Seleucids. Now, that doesn't sound very Catholic when you put it that way, does it? And anybody who thinks that Poland is any different, if anything, they are vastly more founded under Christian values than America is. So if Jews are celebrating Hanukkah that way in America, if Jews have that same connection to their identity in Poland and all across the Western world as this being symbolic of them standing against Christian regimes, then yes, the current celebration of Hanukkah, not the one Jesus celebrated, is evil. Because it's about rebelling against Christian truth. It's about rebelling against Catholic truth. There's not a single person who can actually stand here and defend the celebration of Hanukkah outside of anything besides an invincible ignorance to the fact of the matter that this is the case. This is the underpinnings of the Jewish celebration of the holiday. So, We all know that Jews in America have a disproportionate amount of influence in many cultural institutions. And because they have that disproportionate influence over a plethora of cultural institutions, they have the power to present their perspectives very, very presently. And because of that, and it's mostly because they're smart, very smart, intelligent people. And because they have that the ability to rise up and do things all across these things going on in the Western world, they're able to promote a Hanukkah that is not what it actually is. That is what Hanukkah is. And that, I would imagine, is why I think it's a good thing that that politician extinguished that menorah, because it is a symbol of rising against Christian social orders. It is not a practice of Old Testament Judaism or reverence towards the rededication of the Second Temple. It's about identifying with rebellion against a regime. And that's it. That is the pure identity of Hanukkah. Rebellion against a regime. In the case of the Maccabees, it is a good thing, worthy of celebration. They are martyrs, and I will ask the Maccabean saints to pray for me right now. Ronan, ask them to pray for you. Martyrs, the Maccabean martyrs, please pray for us, and please pray that the truth in this episode shines forth to every single viewer of this program. I have no problem with the Old Testament Maccabean martyrs. I have no problem with the celebration of the rededication of the temple at that time. It was a beautiful thing and it was a godly thing. However, the Jews trying to conflate rebelling against a pagan regime to rebelling against a Christian social order is absolutely unacceptable. Now, obviously, the other aspect of Hanukkah is to give Jewish children a way to get gifts around Christmas time without them actually having to celebrate the birth of Christ. That's why they were talking about people refusing to assimilate. They're talking about Jews refusing to assimilate to Christianity. Well, guys, the gospel mandate is that we are to evangelize all nations. We should not be happy about Jews refusing to assimilate to a Christian social order. We should want Jews to assimilate to a Christian social order because that's what loving Jews entails. So what's the message of this show, Ronan? We love Jews and we want them to go to heaven and we want to evangelize them. How does that sound?
Amazing.
It sounds amazing, guys. We're not coming from a place of hate. We're coming from a place of love when we say these things. And any Christian with any fortitude should be willing to tell their Jewish friends these things about Hanukkah. So, guys, let's celebrate the feast of the Maccabean martyrs, and let's also remember their sacrifice. But remember their sacrifice comparing with the Christians who stood up against pagan Rome, as opposed to Jews standing up against Christian social orders today. With that said, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up on that note. We'll see you next time. God bless.